Okay, Bezat Hashem, today in Masechet Shabbat, we are starting at the top of Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph. We're going to have 4 sections in today's learning. The first section, we're going to finish off with a couple more meimras of Rav, Agadita, we'll see. The second section will focus back on the Mishnah of not being mafsikin for tefilla. We'll see exactly what this is referring to. And the third, we'll introduce a Mishnah about certain things that are not allowed to be done Erev Shabbat. We'll get into that and things on Shabbat. And finally, we'll have a machloket in the Gemara back to karmilit. Legave, if you're allowed to lean over, see a drink in a different in a different domain. Bezat Hashem, let's see. We've been talking about the last sugya from yesterday, Yud Bet, a series of meimras of Rav. That Rav was telling us different mili de agadita, different matters of agadita. So we're going to continue on today with the top of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Let's see that inside. V'amar Rava bar Mechasya, Amar Rav Chama bar Goya, Amar Rav. Very interesting halacha. Kol ir shegagotea gvohin mi beit hakneset. If you have a city where the roofs are higher than the shul, so the roofs of the other buildings are taller than the roof of the shul. L'sof charava, this will end up in destruction. Because what does it show?
Gava.
That they show more chashivut for their houses than they do for Beit HaKnesset. It's symbolic, it shows something. Shneimar, we find in Ezra, the Pasuk says, L'romem et Beit Elokeinu, elevate the house of Hashem, u'leha'amid et chovotav, and we will rebuild its destruction. It's talking about when they came back after the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Ezra brought the Jews back. We're going to lift up the Beit Hashem, and in doing so, we'll fix up the destruction. But chas v'shalom, you do the opposite. You lower the Beit Hashem, causes destruction in the city.
Anyway.
What's that?
You couldn't reach to Har Bayit because it was a mountain.
It has to be on a mountain. It's in Har Bayit. That's true. It's true. You're right.
And when they describe it with Titos, how they conquered it and everything.
Right. Temple Mount, it's called. You're right. But the point is that if you would put the homes higher, it shows you're not machshiv the Beit Elokeinu as much as you're machshiv your homes. But the Gemara says v'hani mili bebatim. This is if it's your homes that you elevate more. Aval bekishkushi ve'ivruri, which Rashi seems to explain refers to forts and towers, basically security checkpoints. Meaning if you have places that are built high, but not because you want to live there or work on, use those places for living, but rather for security purposes, protection, like you have, guard towers.
Okay.
So if that's taller than the shul, that's not a bizayon to the shul. That's for security.
In an apartment building.
So leit lanba, that's not an issue. I saw something very interesting brought here. Is that ayom we don't use the roofs of our homes. We have sloped roofs that they're not flat, that we use them. So it's not an issue. It's only an issue if you're going to use that area on top. So it's like showing I care more about myself than about the shul. But if the roof is not usable, I did see the Art Scroll brings down a shita who says it wouldn't be an issue necessarily.
So don't buy a penthouse. Don't buy penthouse.
Don't buy penthouse. No, so I don't know. That I don't know because the whole building is...
בבניין, לא עכשיו כמה הגובה של הדירה, אבל לא יותר גבוה מהתקרה הזאת.
But also, I don't know if it's practical to build a shul taller than the Green Diamond. It's just not a...
Back then wasn't higher raises building. Everything was one floor.
Why? Most of the shuls, for example, Chorva, בירושלים, that it's like very tall ceiling. There is most of the shuls that I know in Yerushalayim.
Back then, but today everything is going up.
I'll tell you a kasha. I mean, this is, I think, something that you for sure could take from this, however you look at it, is if somebody goes and spends, and I wouldn't say this in every crowd, but if somebody goes and spends millions and millions of dollars to build himself a beautiful home, and it's, with 15 bathrooms and 20 bedrooms and all of that, and then he gives $10 to the shul, the priorities are off. That there's an issue there, meaning, so the idea is that at least we should value Beit HaKnesset, which is supposed to be, it's obvious, but unfortunately...
Shlomo Melech saved because of that.
Right.
Because he built his house
after
he built the Beit HaMikdash. That's what saved him the whole case.
Exactly. That's something I think it requires a bit of a focus, that we should look at the Beit HaKnesset. This is Hashem's house. As we know today, we don't have a Beit HaMikdash, but the Beit HaKnesset becomes Mikdash Ma'at. That becomes the small Beit HaMikdash. So If we had that same perspective, it would change things a lot, definitely. All right. Actually, the Gemara in Megillah tells us that the Beit HaKnesses is called Berabanan. It's called the house of the rabbis. Interesting in halacha it comes out like this also, which is there's certain halachot you're not allowed to do in Beit HaKnesset. You're not supposed to eat, you're not supposed to drink. There's certain things it's considered kalot rosh, it's considered lightheaded or inappropriate, but the rabbis are allowed because it's considered their house. Very interesting. The Gemara tells us that. Today we try not to do these. I mean, I drink coffee anyways, but there are things we try not to do. I don't know, chicken wings, good question. That's a kasha.
I think it's Bashamayim, they would be merciful.
They're happy, right?
For these chicken wings and the French fries.
Because Yosef Menagin makes us chicken wings. All right, let's continue. Amar Rav Ashi. Now Rav Ashi was the Rosh HaYeshiva in a place called Mata Mechasya. So Rav Ashi said, "Ana avdi lemata mechasya de lo chova." I protected Mata Mechasya from being destroyed. Meaning, I made sure in Mata Mechasya, where I was the Rosh HaYeshiva, the homes were not as tall as the shul. I made sure the shul was the tallest structure. But it was destroyed, says the Gemara. What do you mean you protected it? So the Gemara answers, me'ato avon lo chova, meaning it wasn't destroyed because of that avera. Why it was destroyed, we have to find out, do a little research. But it wasn't because the homes were taller than the Beit HaKnesset. Let's continue. It's very interesting. You have to know how to apply this. Tachat Ishmael, if you have to serve somebody, okay, a master, it's better that you should be under Ishmael, under the Arab, I want to call it, Arab ruler, velo tachat nochri. Now here it says nochri. Perhaps the censors changed this. Nochri means goy in general, but Rashi says it doesn't mean any goy, it means Edomim, meaning Romans. It's better to be serving a Ishmaeli, a Arab, than to serve Edomim, than to serve Romans. Why? Because the Romans, Rashi says, were Rishaim Yoter. They were considered more wicked, worse for the Jewish people. It's very interesting. Oh, no, that's for sure. That's not the question. The question is what's worse. So it's saying under Yishmael is better than to be under Edom. Tachat Nochri velo tachat Chabar. It's interesting, by the way, on the side, is that like throughout history, generally the Sfaradim were under Ishmael, at least the Ashkenazim were under Edomi. I mean, it was the Romans created. And we see. I don't know what the tachlis to say in that is, but very interesting. The Gemara tells us this idea. I guess if you have a choice where to live, it's better to live under Roman or whatever today would be called Roman Western civilization.
It's not Italy.
Yes, but now I think we say America is Edom. We say there's such a thing. Better to live there than to live in better to live in the Arab population than to live under Edom. That's what it seems to be, because Edom is Rishaim Yoter. Tachat Nochri velo tachat Chabar. Now the Gemara continues and says it's better to live under Edom and not under Chabar. What is Chabar? So Rashi says it was descendants of Persia. There was a certain group, a nation that existed or existed in Paras, and these were called Chabar. And these are it's better to live under Edom because they're less damaging than to live under these Persians to some degree. It's very interesting today. Iran today is
it's amazing how everything is falling perfect.
Very interesting. Also, what's fascinating to me is that the Gemara does not seem to make a chiluk between then or now. Stam. It's better to be under an Arab than under Edom. Edom under Chabar, meaning times change, right? But I guess the nature of these people, it's the same. So now I don't know if we know who these people are today. Tachlis, that's a different story. But the nature of these people remains. They're Sonei Israel Bioter. So then that's it's worse.
But what did you say in Gemara Megillah? Betabat Hamelech en laashiv, right? Right? So since I heard Rabbi came over today to the shul and said. And since they actually had the stamp of the king back then, they still have some power in the world. And look, and somehow
Paras.
And look, until today, for example, they always trying threat to destroy the world because they still have some.
That's interesting.
Something that you cannot take back.
They still exist. I hear. Interesting. Let's continue. Tachat Chabar velo tachat Talmid Chacham. This is fascinating. It's better to serve Chabar than to serve a Talmid Chacham. What's the pshat? How could that be? So Rashi says very interesting. He says like this, because if you serve Talmid Chacham, it's impossible to always be on your best behavior, to always do the right thing. So what could end up happening, you could make him upset sometime because you could do the wrong thing. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Toveya for Talmidei Chachamim. Yeah. So it says it's better to serve the guy who hates you, or the guy who's mistreating you, than to serve Talmid Chacham, who, if you do something wrong, you'll get punished in Shamayim. It says in Pirkei Avot, it says, you have to be careful migachalto shel Talmidei Chachamim, because we have to get close with them, but we also have to make sure we remain at a certain balance, which is not easy. And finally, tachat Talmidei Chachamim velo tachat yatom v'almana. It's unbelievable. The same idea, really, as Rashi says, is that the tears of a yatom or an almana have tremendous effect in Shamayim. They cry, Hashem is toveh, whoever's bothering them, doesn't make a difference. Hashem's going to pay them back. So it's better to serve a Talmid Chacham than to serve them, because if you serve them, what ends up, chas v'shalom, you do something wrong to them, lo aleinu, that's what that the Torah tells us. We spoke about it last night, actually. Yatom v'almana, these are people that need extra protection, and the Torah goes out of its way. They have extra protection. So in a sense, it's better not to serve them, because chas v'shalom, you could get punished for it. Obviously, we have to help them, but the point is we have to be careful. That's the point. Continues the Gemara. So he says now over here, what types of illnesses, of sicknesses are the worst? He's like, kol choli. Now, choli usually refers to a lengthy disease, like some sort of a long illness that takes away a person's strength. Velo choli me'ayim. So any illness is better than choli me'ayim, than intestinal illness, than stomach problems. Stomach problems, the worst. It hurts you the most. It takes away your strength the worst. Kol ka'ev, now Rashi translates ka'ev as an intermittent illness, meaning it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes. It's not constant. Velo ka'ev lev, but not heartache. Heartache apparently is the worst of the ka'evim. Kol mechush, any type of mechush. Now Rashi explains mechush is a temporary illness, meaning it comes.
Headache.
Mechush, so it means a temporary thing which comes and leaves. Velo mechush rosh, but not a headache. Means headache is the worst of the mechushim, you call it. Interesting. Kol ra'ah, but all the worst things, velo isha ra'ah, not a bad wife. Anything could be bad for a person in life, but to have a bad wife and a bad life, it goes together. That's the idea.
Wow.
Okay. He says a very interesting thing. Let's read it inside, and then I'll explain what Rishonim say. If all of the oceans would be ink, ink, yeah. V'agamim kol musim, and all of the agamim are swamps or marshes. In the marshes, the swamps, they have these reeds that grow. I don't know what you call it in Hebrew, but like the reeds. It's like a plant that grows.
Like the bamboo?
Like bamboo, similar, kanim, exactly. Knesuf, exactly. Exactly. So if all of the marshes would be kul musim, all of the quills, all of those kanim that come from the marshes, vishamayim yiriot, and all of the heavens would be yiriot, is the paper to write on. V'chol bnei adam lavlarin, and all people would be sofrim, scribes. Ein maspikin lichtov chalala shel reshut. We would not, it's a very vague statement. We would not be able to write the depth of the government. So Rashi explains, what does that mean? Very interesting Rashi. Take a look at Rashi. Chalala shel reshut. You see the Rashi? Omek libam. We wouldn't be able to understand the depth of their hearts. Shehut tzarich lihiyot lo lev lekama medinot. Because a government, a king, a Caesar, whatever, a ruler, a president, they need to focus on many countries or provinces. Lemas hakatzuv, for the taxes, ulekama milchamot, and wars, ulekama mishpatim, and rulings. V'akol b'yom echad, all on one day. So it's very interesting. The Gemara is telling us, even if we had access to all of the writings and all of the capacities in the world, we wouldn't be able to stand or handle all of the complications that the government deals with. Now, what's the message? What is the message for us? So I saw the Rishonim speak out. There's different ideas you could say here. But one of the ideas is, it goes, actually I saw opposites almost. One idea is that as much as we want to, very often the government does something, you can start to speak negatively against them. If you understand how hard it is to be in the government and to maintain all of these things at the same time, So we would have a little bit of appreciation. And actually, Chazal tell us is we're supposed to be mitpalel for shlom malchut, is that we're supposed to daven for peace in our government, not dafka in Israel, meaning for America. I mean, we're supposed to daven for the peace in the government. So if we understand how difficult it is to run a country, so then we'll also pray for the peace of the government. I saw a different shot brought down, almost the opposite is, it teaches we should stay away from government. Meaning, like it says in Pirkei Avot, what's the lashon? Al titvada l'rashut, means we should actually maintain a distance, because you don't know what the cheshbonot are. You don't want to get involved in that. So again, it's almost the opposite idea.
A smile face when they need you, and then turn upside on you, and
so stay away. Maintain a distance. Maikra, where do we find this in the Psukim? So the Pasuk in Mishlei tells us, Amar Misharshia, Shamayim larom, the heaven in its height, the Eretz laomek, and the earth in its depth, Velev melachim en cheker, and the heart of kings in cheker is beyond comprehension. Means what they deal with is something that's beyond us. Again, there's different ways to look at that. Either it means is we should have appreciation, recognize they're dealing with a lot of things, so it's hard, or it's, who knows what. You don't want to know what's going on there, so stay away, maintain a bit of a distance.
Can we just recap for a second? Okay, it does describe us that there is no size for how big is the headache and the responsibility
exactly.
To be in the government?
Exactly. What they deal with every day is so much that we should realize how difficult that is.
But it's not only one-man show.
It's true, so all
there
of
is
it.
so many sarim.
It's true, you're right.
Departments.
By the time if it's a melech, he's really the final word.
Right.
So he's make the decision.
Yeah.
And he listens to everybody, but the bottom line, you have to make decision. The war, the taxes, everything is only today. It's not so because
we don't have melachim really
it's spread today to government department.
But also a big yesod which comes from this is we know there's a concept of lev melachim b'yad Hashem, meaning if we see the government seems to be doing things that are anti-Semitic against Jewish people, the government doesn't control tachlis. Hashem controls the. Hashem is mamlech melachim. He puts those people into positions. So we dive into Hashem that the government should be well to us. But the idea is exactly. Exactly. They say it in the Mishaberach. They say, some people say. Here we don't say, I don't think we say, but some places do say. They say that that's part of being mitpalel b'shlom malchut is also davening that Hashem should make sure that those melachim, kiru, they do good to us, right?
But Tachlis Po, he also mentioned that's really referred to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is the one that's running everything. We have no idea, we have no enough ink and layers to write down how Hashem is unbelievable.
Right.
He's the real Melech.
Which is emet, meaning people come and they have their kashas, they say their issues of that this happened, that happened. We don't know the score. We don't know the story. It's like for us, it's like we're watching a snapshot of a whole movie. Like it's one little screen. We don't know. There's a whole movie that happened from the beginning of Bria till Sof, till the end Mashiach comes. It's unbelievable. Let's continue. Now we had this in Ta'anit. Yafet Ta'anit lachalom ke'esh le'ne'oret. We said this in Masechet Ta'anit, remember? And it's also Masechet Brachot, is that if a person has a scary dream, so one of the ideas that he could do to fix it is he could accept on himself Ta'anit Chalom. The effect of Ta'anit Chalom is effective, like Esh le'ne'oret. It's like fire to Ne'oret. Ne'oret is the pieces that fall off when you comb the pishtan, when you comb the flax. It's a material. So just like fire burns up that material, a Chalom, if you have a bad dream, it gives you worry, you might be punished or something. If you do Ta'anit Chalom, it's a kapara, it takes it away. Amar Rav Chizda bo bayom. Rav Chizda says it has to be that day. It means you wake up, that day you fast. That's how it has the effect. Amar Rav Yosef afilu b'Shabbat, even on Shabbat, which is a chidush. Now the Gemara does not speak this out, but in Ta'anit we learned, but if you fast on Shabbat, you're being mevazeh oneg Shabbat. You have to do another so what you have to do is fast again on Sunday as a kapara for taking away the oneg Shabbat that you didn't enjoy because you were not eating. Yeah. But that's what you need to do because that's the best thing.
But there is probably some rules for the Ta'anit that you do during Shabbat. What is required from you if you have a bad dream?
Correct. No, you're right. I saw brought down. If somebody had a bad dream, but it had to do with something he thought about during the day, for example,
it's not fancy.
It's not, because that's not Ta'anit Chalom.
It probably was in his mind.
He was thinking about
so
something.
Deep in his mind.
Exactly.
That even in the
exactly. So there is distinctions. It's not pashut, right? Now the Gemara tells us a story. We had it in Ta'anit. Rabbi Yeshua Breid Rav Idi Ikla Lebei Rav Ashi. So Rabbi Yeshua Breid Rav Idi went to the house of Rav Ashi. So a great rabbi comes to town. Avdile Igla Tilta. They made him Igla Tilta. Rashi explains Tilta here. Very interesting.
Some prime rib from Yochai.
Literally, Igla Tilta means a calf of the third. Tilta is shalosh. So Rashi explains, and elsewhere the Rishonim explain differently. Rashi says here is that when the cow gives birth, the first two babies are not as strong, as healthy. The third one, when it's older already, is the healthiest and the best one. So they gave him a third calf of the mother because that's the best one. Another pshat I think I saw brought down was, not here but elsewhere, was that it was a third of its growth. Meaning when it grows, a third of its growth, it's considered like very...
What do you mean a third of its growth?
It grew a third of its size.
Oh.
That's considered like very good, very tasty, apparently. So they brought him this prime rib, and Amrule, they said to Rabbi Yeshua, Rav Idi, Lit Omar Midi, taste some. So Amar Lahu, he said back to them, Beta'anit yativna. I'm keeping a fast today, I can't eat today. So Amrule said, Velo savar le'mar lahad Rav Yehuda. Don't you know, we learned the Masechet Ta'anit. Amar Rav Yehuda taught, Love Adam Ta'anito Porea. What does it mean? Is that you could
push it off.
If you accept a fast day, remember we explained, is if somebody accepts at the beginning of the year 15 fast days this year, and then the day before he says, okay, tomorrow I'm going to fast, and then something comes up on that day, he could borrow and pay it back. You could push it off and eat today and do it a different day. So why don't you do that? You have prime rib. So Amar Leis, Rav Yeshua, Rav Idi said, Tanit Chalom hu. The problem is this is Tanit Chalom. So I need for myself, so that I feel better, to fast today. I don't want to push it off. Final meimra of Rav here, which is Yafet Ta'anit Lachalom. And he said Yafet Ta'anit Lachalom Ke'esh Lana Oret. So that's why I need to do it. And it has to be on that day. So that's why I need to do it today. Fine. That's the end of the meimra. Let's continue on to the second section. Now, if everybody takes a look back at the Mishnah, we had a Mishnah on Tet Amud Bet, and you should have jumped on me when we learned this Mishnah. Or I should have jumped on you, I'm not sure. The Mishnah had said like this, Tet Amud Bet, the top of the page. Look, I'm going to point out what the Gemara is about to ask. It says like this. Okay, Lo yeshev adam b'fnei sapat samuch lemincha ad sheitpalel. Fine. We're talking about don't do these activities until you daven. Mincha. V'im etchilu ein mafsikin. Good. Mafsikin l'kriyat shema, ve'en mafsikin l'tefilla. Those words, ve'en mafsikin l'tefilla, are extra. Because we already said that you're not allowed to, you don't have to stop for tefillah. It means we already said, v'im hitchil, if he started, ein mafsikin. So why does it have to emphasize again, ve'ein mafsikin l'tefillah? What were we talking about in the beginning of the Mishnah? Tefillah. So it seems to be that the rule of ve'ein mafsikin l'tefillah in the Seifa is extra. Didn't need to say it. Evanta? Look. Lo yeshev adam l'fnei ha'sapa samuch lemincha ad she'yitpalel. And then it says, ve'im hitchilu, these activities, and mafsikin. And mafsikin for what?
They don't stop from what they started to do.
What they started to do what?
The haircut.
No, from what they were doing. Meaning once they started haircut, they don't stop the haircut in order to do tefillah. So why does the Mishnah have to say at the end, mafsikin the kriyat shema? I understand the chidush, but the ein mafsikin the tefillah is extra. You already said ein mafsikin the tefillah.
Tefillah with kriyat shema?
No. We said already kriyat shema. Okay, I understand the chidush of kriyat shema. You do stop for kriyat shema, but ein mafsikin the tefillah is an extra word. Those are extra words. So let's see that inside.
But it does say mafsikin and mafsikin lekriyat shema, and then he goes back.
Fine, okay.
So
that's the kasha.
He didn't add it for the Mishnah with under the sapar mincha.
It's already before. Before we already said that you can't go before mincha before you daven mincha.
But this is mincha. Kriyat shema, you don't say mincha.
Look, the beginning of the Mishnah says you can't do these activities ad she'yitpalel.
Lemincha.
Mincha. And then it says, and if you started these activities, you don't stop for mincha. Meaning, you'll continue the activity and daven mincha after, like we said. Fine.
Okay.
So we know already, if you start one of these activities, you do not have to stop for mincha.
Right.
But then why does the Mishnah say at the end, ve'ein mafsikin letefillah?
Maybe it's a different tefillah.
Okay, I hear, but the point is, why would there be a difference? What's the chidush in that?
Because kriyat shema, you know, read in mincha.
That's two different points. Kriyat shema, you do say mafsikin the kriyat shema. I understand why you need to say that, but you don't need to repeat that you're ein mafsikin letefillah. We know that already. The seifa is extra. Let's see inside. Says the Gemara, "V'mitchilu in mafsikin," and then it said mafsikin the kriyat shema, but in mafsikin the tefilla. So the Gemara says, "Hatana le'reisha." We already taught in mafsikin the tefilla. Hatana le'reisha in mafsikin. So the Gemara answers, "Seifa atan le'divrei Torah." So no, the beginning of the Mishnah is as you understood. If you started one of these 5 activities, you don't have to stop for mincha as long as you have time to daven mincha after. That's the reisha. The end of the Mishnah is something else. The end of the Mishnah is if somebody's learning Torah, ein mafsikin letefillah. That's what it means. If you're learning Torah, you don't have to stop for tefillah. And you do have to stop for kriyat shema because it's man grama. There's a specific time, b'shoch becha uvkumecha, when you lie down, you get up. And it's doraita. But for tefillah, since it doesn't have a zman kavua midoraita, you don't have to stop if you're learning Torah. Now I want to point something out. What's going to come out is, it means not that you don't have to stop and you do it later. You don't have to stop.
But it is.
This is a very particular category. This does not apply to me and you. Let's see. Sefa ta'an le'divrei Torah detanya, like the Breita teaches. Beautiful. Exactly. Hold on. Let's read it inside. You'll understand. Chaverim shayu oskin b'Torah. If the chaverim, talmidei chachamim who are involved in Torah, mafsikin the kriyat shema. They do have to stop for kriyat shema, as Rashi explains, because it has a zman kavua midoraita. But ve'ein mafsikin the tefillah. They do not have to stop for tefillah. That means, let me speak this out clearly. If they're learning Torah, they don't have to daven mincha. Period. They don't daven mincha. So the Seifa of the Mishnah is telling us, it's not that they don't have to stop and they daven mincha later. No, they continue learning Torah. They don't have to daven mincha. It pushes it off. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, this is not applicable to everyone. Lo shanu ela kegon Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai v'chaverav. This is only for people like Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and his friends, means his talmidei chachamim like him. Shetoratan umanutan, because their Torah is their work. That's what they're engaged with all day. So therefore, when they're learning Torah, they don't have to stop for tefillah. Now they do have to stop for kriyat shema, because kriyat shema is a mitzvah d'oraita with a set time, but not for tefillah because it doesn't have a set time in d'oraita. Aval kegon anan, but ananu. But says Rabbi Yochanan is talking about himself. So kal vachomer, mafsikin the kriyat shema or the tefillah. We do have to stop.
Rabbi Yochanan, the Rosh Yeshiva?
Rosh Yeshiva of Eretz Yisrael, exactly.
Oh, okay.
So for us, mafsikin the kriyat shema or the tefillah, we do have to stop for kriyat shema and for tefillah. So it's a very unique category. A chidush the Mishnah is saying, if you're on such a level, toratan umanutan, which I don't know if that applies today practically. I don't know if people are on this level. I don't think so. They don't have to stop for tefillah. What?
Everybody have to pay today.
Exactly. I don't think anybody's toratan umanutan. This is a very, very specific category. So I saw brought down.
המשובשים לא... יש כאלה משובשים,
מה זה משובשים?
משובש is like a little bit מקולקל.
What does that mean? I understand what does that have to do?
משובש זה...
אבל מה הקשר? מה אתה אומר?
בן אדם משובש, מתחיל להשתבש.
Yeah.
So he holds himself from holding...
Are you saying people might do it?
Yeah, he's...
Oh, that's wrong, but it's probably wrong. Yeah. No, wrong. Yeah, no, that's not the idea. So I saw the Rishonim bring down over here, if they don't have to stop for tefillah, why do they have to stop for kriyat shema?
No, right.
No, it's ma'chiluk. So they explain, the pshat is, I saw the article brings down, is that the idea of Torah is lilmod ulilamed lishmor v'la'asot, meaning we're learning al minat la'asot. So therefore, if we have an opportunity to do the mitzvah d'oraita, that's the point. So we stop for kriyat shema, which is d'oraita. Right, but regarding tefillah, which it doesn't have as man midoraita, okay, so that overrides, and you wouldn't. These people would not stop for that.
It's not d'oraita, but I have a kasha.
With tefillah?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's why I was saying, oh, you're right, there is man tefillah, but those manim are midorabanan, the chaura.
I understand it. Okay, fine. But at the end of the day, the Gemara speaks about איזה עבודה שבעלה בתפילה, all the things that we mentioned. Right. And even Rabbi Yochanan is telling you, we are not in the level of that. So why you even mention it? It's Rabbi Shimon. Okay, Rabbi is an exception.
Yeah.
רבים להטות, לא?
Oh, okay, so we want to teach halacha about such people. Listen, it's halacha.
I understand, but halacha for such a people, if we don't have אנשי אמונה avadu, we are saying that
I don't know today.
Level of tzaddikim.
I don't know if we can use this as an excuse today. I agree. You're asking why would the Mishnah teach a halacha that's applicable to a specific...
It is זמן גרמה, לא מהתורה, אבל מדרבנן, and you told us. You taught me, לא בשמיים, also the...
What's your question?
The halachot of the Rabbanan is even stronger than that.
It's true, but the point is that learning Torah overrides that, because Torah is the greatest thing in the world. Limod Torah is achi tov ba'olam, achi chashuv ba'olam. So that overrides. I'm just saying with mitzvot that have a set time midoraita, like b'shach v'chav kumecha, that's a different story. Now the Gemara says, wait a second. What you're saying now is, for such Talmidei Chachamim like this, Toratan umanutan, they don't have to stop for tefillah. Asks the Gemara, v'hatanya. But the Braita teaches, kishem she'en mafsikin letefillah. It says, just like they don't stop for tefillah, kach ein mafsikin lekriyat shema. They also don't stop for kriyat shema, so it seems to be stira. Our Mishnah says they do have to stop for kriyat shema, and the Braita says they don't have to stop for kriyat shema. The Gemara answers a major chidush. Kitani ahi be'ibur shana. This is the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin. Ibur shana was an idea that the Chachamim, the Beit Din, Sanhedrin would get together every year and they would decide, do we have to make a leap year this year? Now there's many reasons why they would do that. The most famous reason is to keep the seasons in line.
Time, right?
Exactly, keep the seasons in line with the holidays. For example, Pesach needs to be Chag Chodesh HaAviv. It has to fall out in the spring. Sukkot or Tishrei is supposed to be in the autumn or the fall.
Before the autumn, yeah.
Exactly. There's specific, as the Torah talks about, and we try to keep that in line. That's the most. There are other reasons.
We also learned it in Masechet Rosh Hashanah.
We did. It all ties in.
The Gregorian calendar.
Torah is all connected. Baruch Hashem. So the point is that Ibur Shana was so important when the Chachamim would get together to discuss this, it would even push off Kriyat Shema. That's the Chidush. Because this will affect everybody, meaning if Pesach and Sukkot needs to be in time, it affects everybody. So therefore, for that, it would even push off Kriyat Shema if they're discussing this inyan. It's a tremendous thing. The Amar of Ada Barahab V'chein Tanu Sabido Agronia, and also the elders of Agronia taught, Amar Rav Elazar bar Tzadok, Kishayinu Oskin Be'ibu Hashana, we were involved in this discussion, B'Yavne, Lo Ayinu Mafsikin, Lo L'Kriyat Shema, V'Lo L'Tefillah, means we did not stop it in order to do even Kriyat Shema. That's a major chidush. Tachlis, that's a major chidush. All right, let's continue. Third section now. Now this Mishnah really is why we brought the last Mishnah, because the last Mishnah we taught what things you're not allowed to do before Mincha, Bichlal. Now we're going to teach things you're not allowed to do before Erev Shabbat. And that's really why we brought that Mishnah in. So says the Mishnah, Lo yetzeh chayat b'machdo samuch l'chashecha. A tailor, a chayat is a person who sews. Yeah. He's not allowed to go out in the street b'machdo with his needles near chashecha, which is 30 minutes before nightfall. Let's say ben hashmashot. He's not allowed to. Why? Shem Erev Shabbat shema yishkach v'yetzeh, because what might happen is he'll forget that he's holding these things, and then he'll end up carrying on Shabbat chas v'shalom. So it's gzera. And similarly, a sofer is not allowed to go around with his pen, with his quill, what he writes with. Again, Erev Shabbat 30 minutes before, because he might also carry on Shabbat.
Used to do that, they put it here somewhere, that's why. המחט היו תוקעים אותה בזה, והקולמוס היה מכניס אותו פה, אז זה לא משהו מחזיק ביד. אז בגלל זה נראה לו זוכר
easy to forget.
שהיו
No, I know, in school they used to do it. Yeah.
עם בדל הגרים.
או הספר עם המסרק, או מספריים.
כן.
The Gemara is going to mention this idea about putting it on them, I believe.
זה במשנה המבוארת של הילדים, רואים את זה בציור, אז זה ממחיש יותר איפה הסכנה, דווקא בבעלי מקצוע האלה, שישכחו משהו ויטלטלו אותו החוצה.
Because it could.
Because the way they carry the machat,
it could go into
wasn't it's not big, it's
attached. It's attached.
היה שם את זה ככה ונוח לו לעבוד.
It's interesting. My grandfather used to sew, and he used to have a ball that he would put. It was like a cushion almost that he put the needles in. Yeah, that's because protection. That's the whole point, because it's sticking around.
ופעם היו תוקעים את זה בבגד עצמו של החייל, אז הוא היה יוצא עם זה החוצה.
Alright, sounds nice. Alright. Let's see. He used to sew a lot, actually. Anyways. Now the Mishnah continues. Okay, those are things you're not allowed to do Erev Shabbat. Now we move on to things on Shabbat you're not allowed to do, because also Gzera, we'll see. V'lo yafle kelav. He cannot yafle his kelim. Now yafle or yafale, he's not allowed to fumigate his clothing. So in order to clean the clothing from, I don't know, was it the bugs or whatever it was? Kinim, the lice maybe. They used to use smoke and things like that to get rid of them. You can't do this on Shabbat. Now we'll see in the Gemara why We're not going to get into it now. V'lo yikra le'or ner. Also, on Shabbat, you're not allowed to read next to the light of the wick of the candle. What's the problem? Maybe you can't read so good and you're going to tilt it, and that would be an issue of havara. So that's a problem. Be'emet amru, however, in halakha it was brought down as follows. Be'emet amru usually means the halakha is like this. Ha-chazan, very interesting halakha. You're not allowed to read from the fire, it's true. But chazan, now Rashi has two pshatim. I'll say the first pshat, I'll tell you the second one in a minute. The first pshat, he says, the Bal Koreh. Chazan is the Bal Koreh, the one who's going to read the Torah tomorrow. So if he wants to know, where am I going to start tomorrow, where am I going to finish, and it's Friday night, Ro'ei chan tinokot korin, he could look, the children who are reading by the light, he could look over their shoulder where they're reading to see, where the kriya begins and ends while they're reading. So meaning in such a way, we're not worried he's going to tilt it because he's not reading in a normal way. He's looking over what the kids are reading, and that would be acceptable. Aval hulo yikra, but he's not allowed to read directly because we have such a chashash. That's one pshat in Rashi. The other pshat Rashi says is chazan refers to melamed tinokot. He wants to see what he's going to teach them tomorrow, the sections. Same idea though, is that he could look over to see over their shoulder, but not directly because that would be an issue of Shema. He will tilt the flame.
What do you mean that the baby's reading?
Meaning children. It's not babies, children. Children were there on Shabbat and they were reading by the fire. Pseder, okay? So they're reading. The chazan, let's say the Bal Koreh, he's allowed to look over their shoulder at what they're reading.
Okay.
But he's not allowed to read it directly, because if he's looking over, he's not going to tilt the flame.
So basically, you give it to Katan.
You don't give it. You don't give it to them. Meaning, if they're reading the Tikkun Korim exactly on Shabbat, he could look over and figure out where does the Kriya begin, end, whatever. Because he's not directly reading, we're not worried.
It's a third party.
It's extended, exactly. That's the point, right?
Okay.
Kiyotzebo, similar idea. Lo yochal hazav im azava mipnei hergel avera. Now, a similar idea we're saying is a zav should not eat together with a zava because it could lead to avera. Now, a zav is a man who experiences a flow of ziva. Now, it's we're not going to get into it so much right now. There's a difference between balkeri and a zav. Balkeri and ziva. Balkeri is somebody who has a normal zera emission, a normal flow. Okay. Meaning a man who has relations with his wife becomes balkeri. Okay, so Ezra is mitaken tefilla for balkeri. Go to the mikveh. Machlokit if it's nogeh today. Some people are very machmir in this, like Chabad, Hasidim, they're very machmir. Some people are not. Yeah, and everyone has al midas smoch lechora. Okay. But ziva is something else. Ziva is if somebody has a not normal flow. It's like it's a disease. They call it, in English, they call it spiritual gonorrhea. It's like a disease. It's not a normal thing where he experiences a flow that's not normal. Now, he's tameh. A zava is a woman who experiences also an abnormal flow. Meaning there's the normal time in the month she has her period. She's called nida. And then there's the not normal time. Rashi in Megillah tells us there's 11 days in the month that is considered when she does not usually have her period. If she has a flow of blood then, enough times, it makes her into a zava. The point is, if they would eat together, it could lead to them having relations, meaning a husband and wife even, and therefore they're not allowed to. Now, kol sheken, Rashi says, if it's a regular man who's tahor with his wife who's a zava, for sure it's an issue. Meaning, we're saying a chidush by a zav who's in a state of sickness. He's not healthy. He's not even allowed to eat with his wife who's a zava because it could lead to avera. Kol shekin, but certainly if it's a healthy husband, he's not allowed to because it could lead to avera. Practically, that's what we're saying. Meaning, this is a distance. It's a gzera to remain.
But if it's a husband and wife, they both suffer from the same thing. They
that's the point, exactly. Zav is zava. They're not allowed to. Now, today, we do eat with our wives when they're nidah, by the way, but you make heker, you make some sort of a distinctive factor. That's why you don't eat on the same table or the same tablecloth or a different, you make some sort of a heker. Again, it's a similar idea because eating is something that is an intimate thing, brings people together. And therefore, we have to make sure when there is, chas v'shalom, a potential issue that could occur, we make some sort of a heker. That is the halacha actually. We do make some distinction, meaning, we know that when it comes to the L'chot Nida, there is such a concept. That's not getting on. Okay. Okay. Fine. Should we wait? Wait a minute. Yeah.
כן. אומר פה הזב, הוא אדם המתאמה מחמת פליטת זיווה. אומר פה בסוגריים, מה זה פליטת זיווה? הדומה במקצת לשכבת זרע.
Exactly.
It's a similar,
it's the abnormal shechvat zera essentially. It's not normal.
הזווה היא האישה הרואה דם בתקופת הימים שבין וסת אחת לחברתה. זה לא הזמן הקבוע שלה. מדובר פה על אישה שיש לה זמנים מאוד גבוהים להירייה.
That's why she's not nida. Meaning it's not nida. Yeah.
הוא אומר על בעילת זווה או הנידה שלא נטהרו.
יש כרת.
על ידי טבילה במקווה לנשים כרת בר מינן. חכמינו ז"ל תיקנו גדרים וסייגים בין בעל לאשתו בזמן שהיא טמאה. אחד מן הגדרים הללו נתקן בשעת סעודתם. כי הסעודה בצוותא יוצרת ביניהם מצב של קירוב הדעת, העלול להביאם לידי עבירה. גזרו חכמים שלא יאכלו על שולחן אחד אלא על ידי שינוי, דרך משל, עליהם לאכול על מפות נפרדות, או לשים ביניהם איזה חפץ שבדרך כלל אינו מופיע על שולחנם. נמצא שההרחקה זאת שלא לאכול עם אשתו הזבה נוהגת באמת אצל כל אדם, ולאו דווקא אצל הזב. והטעם שהמשנה נקטה הזב, למדנו שאפילו הזב, שהתשמיש קשה לו, זה כנראה איזשהו חולי.
איזשהו בעיה, כן.
אסור לאכול עם אשתו זבה או נידה ללא שינוי, מפני הרגל עבירה, וכל שכן אדם הטהור. אפילו שיש לו חולי מסוים שקשה לו התשמיש לעשות, והוא לא into it, it's hard for him everything. החז"ל עשו גדר, על אחת כמה וכמה שהוא מרגיש טוב, בעצם שלו יותר, it's better chance.
Right, exactly. מחכים לך. יאללה. Alright, says the Gemara. Let's go. Final section over here. So the situation we're going to deal with is Mishnah and Eruvin, and it says as follows. Okay, we're going to get back, this is now back to the sugyot of Shabbat. A guy is standing on Shabbat in Reshut HaRabim, and there's, near the Mir in Yerushalayim, there's those little stations where they have like cigarettes and drinks. Do you know what I'm talking about there? You buy like a cigarette for $1 and a drink, like they give you like a cup with soda. You know what I'm talking about? No. You don't have this in America, but in Israel, yeah. It's funny places. Like I always found these places so funny. Like they pour it, it's very funny. Kitzel. So a guy's standing in a Reshut HaRabim, and right next to him is a Reshut HaYachid, and they have one of these little stations. So what he wants to do is lean into the Reshut HaYachid and drink in. His head is going to be in the Reshut HaYachid, and his body is in the Reshut HaRabim, and he could drink. Why is it asur?
Because we said like the hand, that the hand is attached to the body.
Only if it's in the same Reshut. Here it's not the same Reshut. The person is standing in Reshut HaRabim. There's water to drink in the Reshut HaYachid, or wine, whatever you want, bira. So he wants to lean into the Reshut HaYachid and then drink with his head in Reshut HaYachid. אין איסור. There's no איסור.
העיקר שלו זה כמו העץ והברנץ'.
He's in the Reshut HaRabim, but he's leaning into the Reshut HaYachid. So now, what's the problem? Right? So let's see. That's what we're going to discuss here.
Okay, you know what? What happens if he's going to bite something and take it with his mouth?
Oh, beautiful. So now, it really shouldn't be asur because you're not... beautiful. Excellent. Very practical, by the way. You could hear the gezerah, the chashash seems very nogei. If you're leaning in to drink, it's very likely you bring it back, and then that's mamish shekari. Oh, beautiful. So let's get into Rosh Hashanah. So listen to this. The Mishnah is going to say in Eruvin, it's going to say like this. If you only tilt your head in to drink, gzera, because likely, since you're mostly in the Reshut HaRabim, it could be either way, but I'm just giving you an example, you'll bring it back, and that's mamish carrying, kira nacha, that's a problem. But if you went osho verubo into the other Reshut, not a problem. Because then, we're not worried you're going to bring it back, because the most of your head and most of your body is already in the other Reshut. That's what the Mishnah in Eruvin is going to say. Let's read that inside. Tananatam. So the Gemara tells us, the Mishnah says in Eruvin, Lo ya'amod adam b'reshut hayachid v'yishteh b'reshut harabim. He can't stand in the Reshut HaYachid and drink in Reshut HaRabim. Or B'reshut HaRabim v'yishteh b'reshut HaYachid, the opposite. But if he enters his head and most of his body to the place that he's actually drinking, mutar, there's no gzera, because we're not worried he'll bring it back, as most of his body now is in the other location. Yud Aleph Amud Bet, v'chen begat. And it's the same thing with gat. Gat is the wine press. Now, I'm not going to explain this right now, but we'll see in the Gemara later, what's v'chen begat? Right? What is this v'chen begat? Also, it's like that with the wine press. We'll see in the Gemara later. Ibaylo. So the Gemara wonders the following question. Karmilit mai. So that was with Reshut HaRabim, Reshut HaYachid. There's a gzera. If you lean in and you drink, you might carry it back where there's an isur d'oraita. But what's the pshat in karmilit? Let's speak it out for a second. Karmilit is an area that be'etzem, to carry from it to Reshut HaRabim, you're not chayav. Be'etzem, it's patu aval asu. It's asu mid'rabanan to carry from it to either Reshut HaRabim or Reshut HaYachid. We know the idea. That's an isur d'rabanan. So the question now is, do we extend this isur and essentially make gzera legzera? Because what is it now? Imagine I'm standing in the karmilit and I lean into the Reshut HaRabim and I'm drinking. So what's the gzera? You might bring it back. If you bring it back, what's the worst thing you've done? Isur d'rabanan. So do we add another gzera d'rabanan onto a gzera d'rabanan, or do we say, no, in general the rule is, we don't make gzera legzera. That's the general rule. So we're going to have a machloket over here. Do we say the same gzera when it's nogea to a karmilit also, or do we not say the same gzera?
אמרנו שההוצאה מרשות הרבים לקרמילית וכמות השבית זה אסור.
איסור דרבנן.
אבל...
פטור אבל אסור.
אוקיי. ומה אמרת הגזרה השנייה שמה?
So now we're talking about a second gzera. Because really, when you lean into the, let's say you're in the karmilit, you lean into Reshut HaRabim. What's the problem? You might drink and then bring the food back, or back to the other Reshut. What's the worst that would happen if you bring it back?
It's an
isur d'rabanan.
Yes.
If you bring it back, so we would say now.
If you Reshut HaRabim, you lean down into Reshut HaYachid
and you drink, it's not. You didn't do an isur d'oraita. That's an isur d'oraita.
But you know what? Maybe there is a place to make zera like zera.
Why do you say?
This is really basically, it's almost 100% gonna happen. You're gonna go back. So it's low.
Okay, very good, very good. That's what Rav is going to say. Very good.
Third time, I promise you're going to go back with the food.
Okay.
Especially Ochel.
I hear that. What Yochel is saying is, it's not really a different gzera, it's be'etzem the same thing.
It's an extension.
Because in all likelihood, that's what's going to happen. So let's see. So says the Gemara, do we say the same gzera, you can't lean in and eat in the other reshut if you're dealing with a karmilit, which is only a isur d'rabanan? So Abaye says, it's the same thing. Abaye says it's the same issue. It would be asur for a person to lean from karmilit into Reshut HaRabim or vice versa. We extend the same gzera. Rashi explains, the reason we say this is specifically by hotza'ah. Hotza'ah is called melacha garua. It's considered a melacha that's less, people don't take it as seriously, so they want to reinforce this so as to say, even though it's gzera legzera, seemingly, because you can't lean and eat in the Reshut HaRabim, because you might bring it back, which is only in a isur d'rabanan, they're machmir to say, says Abaye, you can't do that either. Rav disagrees and he says, hi gufa gzera. No, the whole issue of carrying in karmilit is gzera. Are we going to get up and make a new gzera and a gzera? We don't generally do that, and Rava disagrees. Now Abaye is going to try to bring a proof to his position that in karmilit we do make such a gzera, and it's going to be from the words that we had in the Mishnah before, v'chein begat. Okay? In the Mishnah we said v'chein begat. Now let's remember, listen good, Chevra. We said over there in the Mishnah in Eruvin, we said, if a person is standing in one reshut, in Reshut HaRabim, and he leans into Reshut HaYachid, asur, because you might bring it back. But Rosho v'Rubo, in the other reshut, it's mutar, because he's going to not bring it back. V'chein begat. So too with a wine press. So says Abaye, well, what is v'chein begat referring to? It sounds like what it's saying is, v'chein begat.
Gat is wine?
Wine is a wine press. Gat is a place they crushed the wine and made wine.
Okay.
It's a place they crushed the wine.
Okay.
So the Gemara, Abaye says, what do you mean v'chein begat? It sounds like there's a gzera also by a wine press. So what is it talking about? So let's see what Abaye says.
Lama wine press have a different Why it's not included in all the drinking?
So let's see.
Maybe they had
Yochai's saying good.
Different type of process that they used to do.
The question is, what's the status of a wine press in halacha? Is it Reshut HaRabim? Is it Reshut HaYachid? Is it karmilit? That's what Abai is going to get on. Let's see. How do I know you do make a gzera like gzera by karmilit? Exactly, the katani, because the Mishnah said at the end, the chen begat. It says the same thing is true. Hold on, the chen begat. It says the same thing is true with a wine press. Now, my gat, what is it? What is the status? What is a wine press in halacha? If it's Reshut HaYachid, let's say it's 4 tvachim wide, 10 tvachim tall, it's Reshut HaYachid. So Tanina, we already taught that example. The beginning of the Mishnah said you can't do that. We understand. And if it's Reshut HaRabim, Tanina, we also taught an example of that. So it must be, it's a different case. Elalav karmilit. It must be that the case of a wine press is karmilit, meaning it's looked at. It's like we explained, 4 by 4 tvachim, 3 to 10 tvachim tall, like we explained. And the chidush of the Braita is to say the same gzera that applies between Reshut HaYachid Rabim is also true by karmilit. So you see where it goes in, gzera like gzera. That's a raya. Gat is a wine press. What? So that's what the Gemara is saying. It can't be, again, let's go through. It can't be Hold on. It can't be Reshut HaYachid because we already taught that example in the Mishnah. Reshut HaYachid to Reshut HaRabim. It can't be Reshut HaRabim, and Rashi speaks out, by the way, Reshut HaRabim. How would a wine press be Reshut HaRabim? It would have to be within 3 tfachim of the ground of Reshut HaRabim. Meaning it would have to be a very low wine press. But Rashi gives an example. If it's not those, it has to be something else. So what is it?
When you say wine press, we're talking about the barrel? What are we talking about?
Oh, it's a place, and you have to use your imagination a little bit, but it's a place.
I went to a wine press once as a child with school.
I understand it's like a bucket. I understand it's like a bucket that they step in it. That's what I understood. I think where they tramp.
אז הוא אומר, למה אומר רבי שאתה מזכיר בכלל וכן בגת? הרי אם אמרנו שאסור להוציא, הרי לרשות הרבים רשות היחיד, זה אומר שגת זה לא רשות לא יחיד ולא רבים, אז זה בוודאי קרמילית. מפה אני כבר יש הוכחה שקרמילית אסור רגע לטלטל, להוציא ממנה, גם תשותה ככה. זו הוכחה למה שאמרנו לפני זה, שגם בקרמילית זה לא גזרה בעצם, זה מובן מתוך...
I mean, the way it is practically, it is גזרה לגזרה, but the point is, you see that we do make גזרה לגזרה. So Rava answers, and Rava says not a kasha. Rava says it's not a proof. Not a proof. Why is it not a proof? Not a proof. Rava's going to respond. He says not a proof. I'll show you why it's not a proof. The chen begat is a completely different halacha. It has nothing to do with hotza'ah and Shabbat. He says it's a completely different halacha, and I want to explain it outside. He's going to say the chen begat is not talking about hotza'ah and Shabbat. It's talking about a different halacha that would be impacted by leaning over the gat, meaning rosho v'rubo. That's really the key here. So what is it? Let me explain. There is a halacha when it comes to produce. Okay, you're a farmer. You grow you grow a barrel of oranges, okay? Are you allowed to eat from those oranges?
In Shabbat?
No, bichlal. We're not talking, Rabbi's going to say it's not talking about bichlal.
If you're maaser,
it's not about hotzah. You can't eat until
it's the 4th year.
You take off maasrot. Truma, maaser, v'chulei, right? You have to give to Kohen, to Levi, to Ani, to all the people that require. Okay. Until you take off Masrot, it's called tevel. What's tevel? Untithed produce. Means it's not fixed up. Zero mitukan. It's not fixed up. Fine. Now, when does the tefua, when does the peirot, when does it all become chayav in Masrot?
The 3rd year?
When it's finished in its process. Means when you process grains, it becomes chayav when it's finished its process. Now, one second. Now, tachlis, grains, I'll give you an example. With grains, when is the conclusion of its production? Grain. Tefua is when you make piles and smooth them out. It's called mi'uach. When you make piles and smooth them out, that's the conclusion of tefua. Tefua.
What is smooth out?
Smooth out. When you make piles of the grain and smooth it out, the tefua itself, that is the conclusion of its process. Now it's chayav and trumot and maasot. You're not allowed to eat from that until you take off trumot and maasot. 1 second. Trumot and maasot. Now the Chachamim said you are allowed to eat a snack. Okay? You are allowed to eat a snack. That means
before the truma.
Before you take off trumot and maasot. Exactly. Before.
Because it's maybe either batel b'shishim or maybe just like a...
It's called achilat arai. You are allowed to eat a snack even before taking off Trumot and Masrot.
What was the...
One second, hold on. Pass me the article for a second. I want to make sure I'm saying something right. Hold on. Let me make sure. Hold on one second. I don't know.
סתם, מה זה? מה העניין? למה זה?
It is interesting. One second. Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. Let me say this good. I want to say this right. Listen to what I'm saying. I want to say this right. When you finish the process, you're not allowed to benefit from it until
snack?
Even snack, seemingly. Before you finish the process. Sorry, let me say this right. Before you finish the process, the Chachamim said you're not allowed to have achilat keva, a meal, but you are allowed to have a snack from it. Now, with wine, the conclusion of the process that you can't eat from it until you take Trumot and Masrot is when you take it from the gat, the wine press, and you put it in the bore. You put it in the wine pit. That's the conclusion of the wine process.
It's wine already.
Correct. But it's considered finale, when it's put in the bore. Until it's put in the bore, it's considered not finished its process yet. Which means you could still have achilat or shtiyat arai from this wine when it's in the gut. Just hold on, I want to get this out right. So, when it's in that gut, you'd be allowed to have a shtiyat arai, but not shtiyat keva. So Rav is going to say like this: if you lean over the gut and you drink from it, that's considered shtiyat arai. That's what the Mishnah meant when it says v'chen begat. When you're leaning over it, you're not drinking in a comfortable way. We're not worried this is going to become shtiyat keva, and that's mutar because it has, again, not yet finished in its process, and that would be mutar. But to take it out of the gut and then to drink outside of it, that's a problem. That would be considered shtiyat keva, and that would not be allowed. That's what the Mishnah is telling us. And it has nothing to do with Hotza'ah and Shabbat.
Again, I don't understand. You tell me that Rava said it's not a raya that's the mention gam begat, she's a karmilit. Nothing to do with the shoot. The things he said, by the processing the wine, the grapes, the end of it, we should not allow to eat suda misuderet. It's by you making the one already put in the barn, right? But before that, when it's the gut, you're allowed to have a test.
Snack. Right.
Okay. So why you said by the wine?
And just listen. Achilat arai by definition is leaning over the barrel. It's leaning over the gut. But if you take it out, that's achilat keva.
Again, achilat arai
would be leaning over. Achilat keva would be if you take it out and drink it outside.
So what's the difference between gut and other things?
So the point is, the example that we're giving in this Mishnah is to show that if you lean over, you could drink the wine like that. But if you take it out, you wouldn't be allowed to drink it unless you took off Trumot and Masrot.
But it's still asur because it's gzera.
That's the point.
What's the difference with gut and orange juice? You're making orange juice over there on the other side.
It could be the same thing. We're just talking about wine here.
Yeah, but
it's not the conclusion of its process. That's the point. If it's not the conclusion of the process, it's not chayav in Trumot and Masrot yet. You're allowed to have achilat arai. Okay. Achilat arai is leaning over the barrel. But if you take it out, that's already achilat keva. It's less permanent.
But
it's less kavua.
But it's not to do the way, it's the amount.
No. Okay, I hear where you're getting wrong. No, you're wrong. Meaning enachinami. In this way, the way you'd consume it.
But how you can get to a karmilit?
One second. The way you consume it is by, if you're drinking leaning over, this is by definition not considered achilat keva.
Specific to wine.
This is a unique thing. It might be the same with orange juice, by the way, but the point is, in regards to wine, if you're leaning over the gat and drinking, that's not shtiyat keva. That's a shtiyat arai. And therefore, says Rava, as we're going to see, it's a machloket about this, but in such a case, you would be allowed to do that even though you haven't yet taken off Trumot and Masrot. But like the case of the Mishnah, once you take it out, that would be problematic because then it's like shtiyat keva, and you'd only be allowed to drink that if you took off Trumot and Masrot. That's the comparison to the Mishnah and Eruvin, but it has nothing to do with Hotza'ah legabe a karmilit. That's the point. I'm going to read it quickly so we can get in the recording, and then I'll explain it after. Says the Gemara. Amar Abai, says Rava. Where are we here? Lost the place. Rava Amar v'chein begat le'inyan maaser. No, v'chein begat is really regarding maaser. V'chein Amar Rav Sheshet v'chein begat le'inyan maaser. It's regarding maaser. The Tanan, like the Mishnah tells us in Masrot. I'm going to read it quickly so we can finish this in. Alagat ben alachamin ben alatzonen. Shotin alagat ben alachamin ben alatzonen upatur divrei meir. Meir says if you're leaning over this gat, whether you mix the wine with warm water or hot cold water, we're not worried, and you would be allowed to drink in that way because that's considered aray. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok mechayev. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok says either way, if it's diluted, you'd be chayev because that's keva. V'chachamim omrim alachamin chayev alatzonen patur mipnei shu machzeres et hamotar. The chachamim say that for the hot you'd be chayav. If the cold water dilutes you patur because he'll return the excess. Now, let me just explain now what I just did. I just wanted to get that in because it is on my recording here. It only has an hour. So let me just explain what just happened. We have 3 shitot over there in Masechet Masrot. Generally, they did not drink wine unless they mixed it with water. You didn't drink wine without it being mixed with water. Okay. So like this.
Very strong back then.
Mm-hmm. So some people still do today, actually, as the truth is. So what happened is like this, is that if a person was going to drink wine, he would naturally put water into it. Now, where you put cold water into it, so after you taste a little, you could theoretically put it back into the gat. Because cold water in the gat, it won't ruin the wine. But if you put warm water into it, the issue is that you're not going to spill it back in because warm water apparently ruins the wine. I don't know why exactly, but apparently it ruins the wine. So we have a machloket here in this Mishnah in Masrot. If he's leaning over, I'll read it again. If he's leaning over the gat, he's leaning over that place where they crush the grapes, ben alachamin. So the Rabbi Meir says, whether he diluted the wine with hot water, ben alatzonen, or cold water, upatur, divrei Meir. You could drink that, it's not a problem. Now the reason he says that is because he holds, as long as you're leaning over the gat, it's considered achilat aray. It's not chayav in Shomot and Masrot yet. That is permissible. That's what he holds, even if it's warm water. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok argues, and he says, no. Once you dilute it, that already by definition becomes achilat keva. So therefore, if you put water into the wine, even if you're leaning over, that's going to be a problem. You can't drink that until you take off Trumot and Masrot.
Lean on something, then it's changed the status of your
he holds it doesn't make a difference. He says you have to take off Trumot and Masrot. Exactly.
At the end of the day, what is joying, the body or the mouth? The body.
Both. Meaning the point is, if you're leaning over, so then the likelihood is you drink a little, you put it back. It's not really achilat keva. So Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok says, but that doesn't make a difference. Once you put water,
drink a lot,
it doesn't make it. Seemingly, it doesn't make a difference. I'm going to say seemingly because I don't want to get into that right now. That's a different discussion. But Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok says it doesn't make a difference. Even if you're leaning over, that if you mix it with water already, that's achilat keva. You'd have to take off Trumot and Masrot.
But who mix it in the water? And in the pit?
No. You bring a cup of it and you put water inside.
Now you can take a cup from another reshut to another place.
Not another reshut. It's nothing to do with another reshut. It's nothing to do with another reshut now.
Your body is standing.
No. Nothing to do. You're standing next to a gat. This has nothing to do with another reshut. That's what Rav is saying.
I'm walking in Reshut Arabim, and then this is a karmilit.
This is nothing. Rav is saying that the v'chein begat has nothing to do with reshuyot and Shabbat.
I understand. Yeah. We're talking about Ma'asrot now.
Correct. I do exactly.
This is another confusion.
Yeah. I'll explain it. Let me just finish. Let me finish the shita. The Chachamim argue. The third shita, and the Chachamim say if you're leaning over and you mix it with warm water, chamin, so then you'll be chayav because generally you wouldn't pour it back into the gat. If you put warm water into it. And then so therefore you have to take off Trumot and Masrot because clearly you're not going to put this back in. You're going to drink the whole thing. So that'll become Sudat Keva. But if it's Tzonen, you would put it back in and therefore it would be Sudat Aray. It's not going to be Sudat Keva. But what's the point though? The point is, let me just explain clearly the point because this is really the important nekudah. What Rav is saying is, you Abaye, you're trying to say v'chein begat is a proof that karmilit, you're not allowed to lean over into the other reshut and drink like that because it's an issue of gzera legzera. This has nothing to do with hotza'ah and Shabbat. This is not karmilit and it's not talking about hotza'ah. It's a different halacha altogether, which is that since when it's in the gat, it's not yet finished, you're allowed to have achilat aray. What is achilat aray? So v'chein begat is that if you lean over into it, just like in Shabbat, which is a completely different halacha that has to do with an issue of gzera, reshuyot, so too with the gat, Rabbi Meir, we follow that shita, let's go, and he says, if you're leaning over it, by definition it is achilat aray, and you're allowed to drink it like that. That's the point. Chamokar doesn't make a distinction. Okay, so there's a machloket, but the point is that's what it means v'chein begat. V'chein begat simply means that if it would be in such a state in the gut, you could drink from it, you don't have to take off Trumot and Masrot. How? Like on Shabbat, where you're leaning over, Rosho v'rubo, into it, if you're leaning over like that here too, that would be acceptable.
So my whole lesson
it's nothing to do with Shabbat. That's what so Rav says, not a kasha on me, because that has nothing to do with karmilit. And we're going to stop here. We'll pick up with another proof tomorrow from our Mishnah, actually.
But I don't understand one thing.
Yeah.
Why I have to learn about Ma'asrot here, if you're talking about Yitziot Shabbat? Something that is relating to karmilit and into two different rashiyot.
I hear. Good question. So the way Rava would explain is because the underlying halacha is the same. The mechanic is the same.
Basically, we're talking about
leaning.
Because he wanted to clarify just the word gat.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Abaye brought a proof. He said it's talking about karmilit on Shabbat, and Rava says no, it's not. Why is it brought here? It's an interesting question. Meaning, it is an unrelated halacha. It's related in the sense
because it said bechen
you can't lean. You can lean and drink. That's what it means.
We want to clarify first of all the gat, which is but the whole idea here of the Mishnah is the Mishnah. No, the Braita, right?
It's a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah.
It's Mishnah.
Yeah.
That's
the chidush. If you're machnis rosho verubo legat, it's mutar. You don't have to take off trumot and masrot. That's the way we're reading it now.
Let's say this is a karmilit.
No, but Matan, I want to point out what you're saying. You're right. Be'etzim, you're right. What you're saying is this has nothing to do with hotza'ah, rishuyot, Shabbat, nothing to do. But what it does have to do is if you're machnis rosho verubo into the gat, it's considered achilat aray, and you don't have to take off masrot.
But how
that's the chidush. Now it's a chidush because that's not
but my
two different halachot altogether.
My confusion is like what I have to enter into the pit.
You lean over, just lean over. Don't go into it. Lean over.
But how? What you call rov?
Okay, let's say I don't know. Whatever you call rov. Let's say down to your waist. I don't know. Yeah, kitza, whatever it is. The point is that would be that's the chidush. But it's nothing to do with karmilit, and if you don't have a kasha against me. All right, we'll pick up tomorrow, Chaver. Bezat Hashem, we'll do Yud Aleph Amud Bet.